The research station, Nexus 7, floated silently in the darkness of space, its metal walls gleaming under the light of a dying neutron star. Inside the station, hundreds of beings from different worlds worked side by side. Some had fur, some had scales, and some, like Hyunwoo, had smooth skin and wore simple blue uniforms. Hyunwoo was a human engineer. He was 32 years old with short black hair and careful hands. Every day he fixed broken things on the station. Pumps, computers, doors, lights. If something stopped working, Hyunwoo made it work again. He was good at his job because he was patient and thought carefully before he acted. Today, Hyunwoo was working in a small room filled with pipes and machines. The room controlled the air that everyone on the station breathed. It was important work, but it was also quiet and lonely. Hyunwoo liked the quiet. It helped him think. On the metal table beside him sat his most precious tool. It was not a wrench or a scanner. It was a pen. An old-fashioned ink pen with a brass body that had turned slightly green with age. His grandfather had given it to him before he died. The old man had used this pen to draw buildings for 50 years. Now Hyunwoo used it to write notes and make calculations. The pen was special because it reminded Hyunwoo of home, of his grandfather's workshop, where sawdust covered the floor and papers covered every surface. Of quiet afternoons learning to measure twice and cut once. Of hands that were old and spotted but still steady and sure. High above Hyunwoo's workplace, 3 young aliens watched through a thick window. They were Vornak, a species that looked like a cross between a wolf and a big cat. They had sharp teeth, sharper claws, and fur that ranged from silver to black. These 3 were cubs, not yet fully grown but already dangerous. The eldest was Thrax. His fur was silver gray with dark stripes, and his amber eyes watched everything with fierce interest. He was 14 years old by his planet's calendar, which made him almost an adult. He thought he was ready to be a warrior like his father. But first he had to complete this educational program on the station. Beside Thrax stood Kira. She was 13, with darker fur and green eyes that missed nothing. Where Thrax was quick to act, Kira preferred to watch and learn. She had been the best hunter in her age group back home. Not because she was the fastest, but because she was the most patient. The youngest was Vex. At 12, he was small for a Vornak with bright copper-colored fur and too much energy. He could never sit still for long. Right now he was pressing his nose against the window, trying to see what the human was doing. The 3 cubs were on Nexus 7 to learn about other species. Their teacher, Elder Wrath, believed that future Vornak warriors needed to understand the galaxy beyond their home planet. So far, the cubs had learned that most species were smaller and weaker than Vornak. They had also learned that humans were the smallest and weakest of all, or so they thought. Down in the engineering room, Hyunwoo picked up his pen and began to write. The numbers flowed onto the paper in neat rows. He was calculating the pressure needed to fix a valve. His pen scratched softly against the paper, a sound that always made him feel calm. Then the station shook. It was not a big shake, just a small tremor that lasted maybe 2 seconds. A tiny rock from space had hit the outer hull. The station's shields absorbed most of the impact, but not all of it. Equipment rattled. Lights flickered. And Hyunwoo's pen rolled off the table. The cubs watched as the pen fell 3 meters down onto the metal grating below. They heard the crack even through the thick window. The pen hit the ground, bounced once, and lay still. Hyunwoo climbed down the ladder quickly. He picked up the pen with both hands, turning it over slowly. The barrel had cracked. The clip had broken off completely. When he tried to write with it, nothing happened. The inside was broken too. The cub saw something strange then. The human's face changed. His eyes grew sad. His shoulders dropped. He held the broken pen like it was something alive that had just died. For almost a full minute he just stood there looking at the pieces in his hands. Finally, Hyunwoo carefully placed the pen in his shirt pocket. He patted it once gently. Then he returned to his work, using a different pen to finish his calculations. But the cubs noticed that his movements were slower now, less certain. That evening the 3 cubs sat in their quarters, a small room with simple bunks and not much else. Thrax was pacing back and forth the way he always did when he was thinking hard. "Did you see that human today?" he asked. "The way he acted about that broken pen?" Kira nodded slowly. She was lying on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. "I saw it. It was strange. It was just a tool. Tools break. You get a new one. But he looked sad, Vex said. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, his tail swishing back and forth with excitement. Really sad. Like when my mother's sister died last year. That kind of sad. Thrax stopped pacing. Exactly. Elder Wrath told us that humans attach feelings to objects. I thought he was joking, but we saw it today. That human cares about that pen the way we care about family. The three cubs sat in silence for a while. On their home planet of Kresh Prime, tools were just tools. If your knife broke, you made a new knife. If your spear cracked, you cut a new spear. Nothing lasted forever, and that was fine. What mattered was strength, skill, and the hunt. But humans were different. The cubs had been on the station for 3 months now, and they had seen many strange things. Humans kept pictures of people who were far away. They wore jewelry that belonged to dead relatives. They saved old clothes and books and toys. At first, the cubs thought this was weakness. Now they were not so sure. We should help him, Vex said suddenly. His eyes were bright with the idea. We should fix the pen. Thrax's ears perked up. Fix it? How? I don't know, Vex admitted. But we're Vornak. We're strong and smart. If the pen is broken, we put it back together. Simple. Kira sat up on her bunk. It would be a good deed. In our tradition, if you repair another warrior's weapon without being asked, it shows great respect. Maybe humans have the same tradition. Elder Wrath always says we should try to understand other species, Thrax added. What better way to understand than to help? The decision was made. The three cubs would fix the human's broken pen. They would do it in secret as a surprise. They imagined the human's face when he found his pen repaired. He would be happy. He would thank them. Maybe he would even tell other humans about the kind Vornak cubs. It seemed like such a simple plan. Take the pen, fix it, return it. What could possibly go wrong? The cubs did not know that fixing a human pen required more than strength and good intentions. They did not know that human tools were delicate, precise, and complicated. They did not know that what seemed broken to them and what seemed broken to humans were two very different things. Most importantly, they did not know that the pen was not just broken. It was a connection to a person who could never be replaced. It was memory made solid. It was love that could be held in your hands. But they would learn. Oh yes, they would learn. For 2 days, the cubs watched Hyunwoo. They learned his schedule like predators studying prey. He woke at a 600 station time. He ate breakfast in the cafeteria, always sitting alone with a book. He worked until 1800, moving through the station's endless corridors, fixing things that broke. He ate dinner, usually something simple from the automated food dispensers. Then he returned to his quarters and slept. The cubs noticed that every evening before sleep, Hyunwoo took the broken pen from his pocket. He would look at it for a long time, turning it over in his hands. Then he would place it carefully on his desk, right next to a small photograph of an old man with kind eyes and weathered hands. That must be his father, Kira whispered one night as they watched through the air vent above his room. Vornak were very good at moving through small spaces when they needed to. Or grandfather, Thrax suggested. The man in the picture looks very old. On the third night, they made their move. Hyunwoo's door had a simple lock, the kind that kept honest people honest but did nothing against determined cubs with sharp claws. Vex had learned to pick such locks in less than 10 seconds. It was a skill that would have horrified Elder Wrath if he knew about it. The door opened silently. The three cubs slipped inside like shadows, their padded feet making no sound on the metal floor. Hyunwoo slept deeply, his breathing slow and steady. The room was small and neat with everything in its place. Very human, Thrax thought. Everything organized, everything labeled, everything just so. The pen lay on the desk where it always was. Kira picked it up carefully, using just the tips of her claws. Even broken, it felt fragile in her strong hands. She could smell something on it, a scent that was uniquely human. Sweat, oil from skin, and something else. Something that might have been time itself. They left as quietly as they had come. Thrax pulled the door closed until it clicked softly. Then they ran through the empty corridors, their hearts pounding with excitement and a little bit of fear. They had the pen. Now they just had to fix it. The storage bay that the cubs had claimed as their workshop was in a forgotten corner of the station. It had been used years ago but was now full of old equipment waiting to be recycled. Perfect for three cubs who needed privacy. They cleared a space on a metal shelf and carefully laid out the broken pen under a bright work light. The three of them stared at it, really seeing it for the first time. It's so small, Vex said. It was small. Smaller than any tool the Vornak used. The brass body was cracked down one side. The clip that had held it in place was completely gone. Inside, through the crack, they could see tiny pieces. Springs, tubes, chambers, all of it broken or bent or out of place. How does it work? Kira asked. None of them knew. Vornak did not use pens. They recorded information on digital tablets or simply remembered it. Writing by hand was something their ancestors had done, long ago before technology. Thrax tried to take the pen apart to understand it better. His claws, so useful for hunting, were too thick for the delicate work. When he tried to unscrew a tiny piece, his claw slipped and bent the metal. Careful, Kira hissed. We're supposed to fix it, not break it more. It's already broken, Thrax growled back, frustrated. How can we make it worse? They soon learned that things could always get worse. Every attempt to fix the pen seemed to damage it further. The crack in the barrel grew longer. Small pieces fell out and rolled away. One spring disappeared completely, probably fallen through a gap in the floor grating. We need to hold it together, Vex said finally. If all the pieces are in the right place, it will work again. That's how fixing things works, right? It seemed logical. Back on Kresh Prime, when a spear shaft cracked, you bound it with leather strips. When a knife handle split, you wrapped it with strong cord. You held broken things together until they were one piece again. The cubs searched the storage bay for something to bind the pen. They found a first aid kit attached to the wall, the kind meant for human workers. Inside were bandages, medicine patches, and several rolls of medical tape. White, sticky, and strong. Perfect, Thrax said, grabbing a roll. They began wrapping. Thrax held the pen while Kira carefully unwound the tape, but the tape stuck to her fur, to her claws, to everything except where they wanted it. Vex tried to help by cutting the tape with his sharp teeth, but that just made sticky messes. Finally, working together with growing frustration, they managed to wrap tape around the cracked barrel. Thrax pulled it tight, trying to close the crack. There was a small cracking sound. The crack had grown larger. Maybe not so tight, Kira suggested quietly. They tried again, more gently this time. The tape held the crack together, sort of. It looked terrible, all lumpy and uneven, but at least the pen was in one piece again. That was good, right? Next, they tried to fix the inside parts. The tiny spring that made the pen work had popped out. Kira tried to push it back in, but her claws were too big. She pushed too hard. Something inside went snap. It's fine, she said quickly. We'll just tape it in place. More tape. They wrapped tape around the internal mechanism, trying to hold everything in position. The pen was starting to look less like a pen and more like a small mummy, wrapped in white bandages. Does it work? Vex asked. Thrax found a piece of paper in the storage bay, an old shipping manifest that no one needed anymore. He tried to write with the pen. Nothing happened. He shook it. Still nothing. He pressed harder. The tape-wrapped barrel bent under the pressure. More tape, Vex said. It was becoming his solution to everything. They added more tape, and more and more. The pen grew fatter with each layer, white and lumpy and completely wrong. By the time they finished, it looked nothing like the elegant brass pen they had taken from Hyunwoo's desk. It looked like a child's art project, the kind that parents praise while secretly wondering what went wrong. The cubs sat back and stared at their creation. None of them wanted to say what they were all thinking. Finally, Kira spoke. It doesn't look very good. But it's together, Thrax argued, though his voice lacked confidence. All the pieces are held in place. Maybe it works now, even if it doesn't look pretty. Vex picked up the tape-covered pen carefully. He tried again to write with it. The tip barely touched the paper before the whole thing flexed in the middle like a soft noodle. The tape had no structure, no strength. It held the pieces together, but not in any way that was useful. It's worse, Kira said softly. We made it worse. The truth settled over them like a cold blanket. They had started with a broken pen that might have been repaired by someone who understood human tools. Now they had a broken pen wrapped in so much tape that it could probably never be repaired by anyone. What do we do? Vex asked. For the first time since they started this adventure, he looked scared. Thrax stood up, his tail lashing back and forth in agitation. We have to try again. We'll take off all the tape and start over. This time we'll be more careful. But when they tried to remove the tape, it stuck to everything. The adhesive had bonded to the brass, to the remaining pieces of the mechanism. When they pulled the tape away, more pieces came with it. Small, important-looking pieces that they could not identify and did not know how to replace. By dawn station time, The cubs sat in their workshop, surrounded by pieces of tape, fragments of brass, and tiny springs that no longer had a home. The pen was completely destroyed now. Not broken, destroyed. And somewhere in his quarters, Hyunwoo was waking up to discover that his grandfather's pen was gone. Hyunwoo stood in the station security office trying to stay calm. His pen was gone. Stolen. The one thing that truly mattered to him, taken in the night while he slept. "Are you sure you didn't just misplace it?" the security officer asked. She was a large woman from one of the outer colonies. Practical and no nonsense. People lose things all the time. "I didn't lose it," Hyunwoo said quietly. "It was on my desk. I put it there before sleep, like I do every night. This morning it was gone." The security officer pulled up video feeds on her screen. "I'll check the hallway cameras. If someone entered your quarters, we'll see them." Hyunwoo nodded and left the office. He needed to get to work. Equipment did not fix itself just because he was having a bad day. But as he walked through the corridors, he felt empty. The pen had been more than just a tool. It had been his last physical connection to his grandfather. Now it was gone. Ji-won found him an hour later working on a broken pump in the water recycling section. She was a xenolinguist, someone who helped different species understand each other. She was also his friend, one of the few people on the station who understood why a simple pen mattered so much. "I heard," she said simply, sitting on a nearby crate. "I'm sorry." Hyunwoo did not look up from his work. The security officer said she would check the cameras. "I already checked them," Ji-won said. Hyunwoo looked up in surprise. She gave him a small smile. "I have access to the security feeds for my cultural studies. I thought I might help, and?" "The Vornak cubs took it." Hyunwoo set down his tools. "The cubs? Why would they steal my pen?" "I don't think they see it as stealing," Ji-won said carefully. "I've been watching the footage. They've been following you for days, observing you. They saw the pen break. They saw how upset you were. So they took it? I think they're trying to fix it." Hyunwoo blinked. "Fix it, but they're Vornak. They don't understand human tools?" "Exactly." Ji-won stood up. "Come on, I found where they're working. We need to get there before they damage it further." They walked quickly through the station's lower levels, down corridors that few people used. Ji-won led Hyunwoo to a storage bay marked for recycling. Through a small window in the door, they could see the cubs. The 3 young Vornak were hunched over a workbench. They were arguing in their language, a mix of growls and clicking sounds. Pieces of white tape covered the floor around them, and in the center of the bench sat something that might once have been a pen. Hyunwoo felt his heart sink. The pen was wrapped in so much tape that it looked like a white cocoon. Bits of brass showed through gaps in the tape. Small metal pieces lay scattered across the bench. His grandfather's pen was destroyed. Ji-won put a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said softly. "Watch them." The cubs were clearly distressed. The smallest one, with bright copper fur, was trying to pull tape off the pen. The pieces came away in sticky clumps, bringing bits of brass with them. The middle cub, darker furred, was collecting the scattered pieces, trying to figure out how they fit together. The largest cub paced back and forth, his tail lashing in frustration. "They're failing," Ji-won said, "and they know it. Look at their body language. They're scared." She was right. The cubs did not look like the fierce predators that everyone feared. They looked like children who had broken something valuable and did not know how to fix it. Hyunwoo took a deep breath and opened the door. The cubs froze. 3 pairs of eyes locked onto the humans in the doorway. For a long moment, nobody moved. The cubs' muscles tensed, ready to fight or run. Their ears flattened against their skulls, a sign of submission that Ji-won recognized from her studies. Hyunwoo walked slowly into the room. He looked at the tape-covered pen on the bench, at the scattered pieces, at the 3 cubs who looked ready to bolt. He felt anger rise in his chest. That pen had been his grandfather's. These cubs had destroyed it with their clumsy, ignorant attempts at repair. But then he looked at their faces. Really looked, and he saw something that stopped the angry words before they could leave his mouth. The cubs were terrified. Not of punishment, though that was part of it. They were terrified because they had tried to do something kind and had failed completely. Hyunwoo knew that feeling. He knew it well. "Ji-won," he said quietly, "can you translate for me?" "Of course." Hyunwoo knelt down, bringing himself to the cub's eye level. It was a vulnerable position, one that made the cub's ears lift slightly in surprise. Predators do not make themselves smaller. I'm not angry, he said. Jiwan translated his words into the Vornak language, her voice taking on the clicks and growls. I want to understand. Why did you take my pen? The largest cub, Thrax, spoke first. His voice was rough, embarrassed. Jiwan translated. We saw it break. We saw your face. You were sad. We wanted to help. You wanted to help, Hyunwoo repeated. By fixing it? The middle cub, Kira, nodded. In our culture, if you repair another warrior's weapon, it shows respect. We thought humans would be the same. And the tape? Hyunwoo asked, looking at the white mess on the bench. The smallest cub, Vex, spoke up. On our world, when something breaks, we bind it back together. We make it stronger. We thought... His voice trailed off. We thought it would work. Hyunwoo picked up the tape-wrapped pen carefully. It was sticky and warm from the cub's handling. Through the gaps in the tape, he could see the brass body cracked and bent. The internal pieces were scattered across the bench, some too damaged now to ever work again. His grandfather's pen. Destroyed. Not by malice, but by good intentions and cultural misunderstanding. May I ask you something? Hyunwoo said to the cubs. Why is this pen important to me? The cubs looked at each other. Thrax answered. It is a tool. Tools help us do work. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed. But it's more than that. This pen belonged to my grandfather. He used it every day for 50 years. When he died, he gave it to me. Every time I used this pen, I remembered him. His hands holding it, his voice teaching me. Do you understand? Jiwan translated. The cubs listened, their ears slowly rising from their flattened position. Kira spoke softly. It was not just a tool. It was a memory. Yes, Hyunwoo said. A memory I could hold in my hands. Silence filled the storage bay. The cubs stared at the ruined pen with new understanding. They had not just broken a tool. They had destroyed a piece of someone's heart. Bex made a sound like a whimper. We are so sorry. We did not know. We wanted to help, but we made everything worse. Hyunwoo set the pen down gently. He looked at the three cubs, at their miserable faces, at the tape stuck to their fur and the shame in their eyes. And he made a decision. Tell me, he said. Why did you use tape? The cubs looked confused. Thrax answered cautiously. Because when things break, you bind them together. You make them whole again. On your world, Hyunwoo said, that works. For your tools, your weapons. They need to be strong and simple. Quick to repair. Am I right? The cubs nodded. Human tools are different, Hyunwoo continued. We make them delicate and precise. We spend time on details. We fix them carefully, piece by piece. Not because your way is wrong, but because our tools need different things. He picked up the scattered pieces of the pen's internal mechanism. But you know what? Your binding method works great for many things. Emergency repairs. Temporary fixes. Times when speed matters more than perfection. The cubs perked up slightly. Really? Kira asked. Really, Hyunwoo confirmed. Different methods for different problems. Both are right. Both are useful. You just need to know which method fits which problem. He looked at the ruined pen, at the eager cubs, at Jiwon, who was watching him with a knowing smile. An idea was forming in his mind. A crazy idea maybe, but also possibly wonderful. I have a suggestion, Hyunwoo said. Instead of me fixing this pen alone or you three trying alone, what if we fix it together? The storage bay became a classroom. Hyunwoo brought his tools from his quarters. Small, precise instruments that looked like toys in the cub's large paws. Magnifying glasses, tiny screwdrivers, wire cutters no bigger than his finger. The cubs watched with fascination as he laid everything out on the cleaned workbench. First, Hyunwoo said, we need to see what we're working with. He began carefully removing the tape from the pen. Jiwon stayed to help translate, though the cubs were learning to understand more human words each day. The tape came off in long, sticky strips. Underneath, the damage was worse than Hyunwoo had hoped, but not as bad as he had feared. The brass barrel was cracked but still in one piece. The internal spring mechanism was bent but not broken. Several small parts were missing, probably lost when the cubs had worked on it. Can you fix it? Thrax asked quietly. Hyunwoo studied the pieces. Maybe, but not alone, and not by making it exactly like it was before. He looked up at the cubs. We're going to make something new. Something that combines what I know with what you know. How? Kira asked. You'll see. But first, you need to learn to be gentle. Over the next week, whenever Hyunwoo had free time, he came to the storage bay. The cubs came too, eager to learn. Hyunwoo taught them patience. He showed them how to hold delicate tools without crushing them, how to turn tiny screws without stripping the threads, how to look closely at something small and see all its details. It was hard for the cubs. Their claws were sharp and meant for tearing. Their strength was meant for hunting. But they tried. Vex practiced picking up tiny washers and placing them in exact positions. Kira learned to use magnifying tools to see the small parts clearly. Thrax worked on controlling his strength, learning to press gently instead of firmly. In return, the cubs taught Hyunwoo their methods. They showed him how to make strong bindings that would hold even under extreme stress, how to reinforce weak points with simple wrapping techniques, how to think about repairs not as restoration but as improvement. On Kresh Prime, Thrax explained one day, nothing is permanent. Everything breaks eventually, so we don't try to keep things perfect. We make them strong enough to work, and when they break again, we make them strong again. It's a cycle. Humans are different, Hyunwoo said. We want things to last. We form attachments. We remember. He picked up the cracked brass barrel of the pen, but maybe both ways have value. The repair plan came together slowly. Hyunwoo would fix the delicate internal mechanism using precision tools and replacement parts he ordered from the station's supply. The cubs would create reinforcements for the weak points, using a special polymer that was stronger than tape, but could be shaped while soft. Together, they would rebuild the pen into something that honored both approaches. Word spread through the station about the unusual collaboration. Other crew members started to visit the storage bay, curious to see a human working with Vornak cubs. Elder Wrath came one day, expecting to find his charges causing trouble. Instead, he found them bent over a workbench using tools with careful concentration, following instructions from a human. The old warrior watched in silence for a long time. Finally, he approached Hyunwoo. You are teaching them precision, he said in heavily accented human language. They are teaching me strength, Hyunwoo replied. It seems like a fair trade. Elder Wrath nodded slowly. I was wrong about humans. I thought your attachment to objects was weakness. Now I see it as a different kind of strength. You remember, you preserve. These are not small things. After 3 weeks of work, the pen was ready. It looked different from the original. The brass barrel had been carefully welded and smoothed, but the repair was visible as a thin silver line. At the stress point, small bands of dark polymer wrapped around the barrel, placed there by the cubs' careful claws. These bands were both decorative and functional, protecting the weak spots while adding character. The internal mechanism was entirely new, built from spare parts and modern components. It would never jam like the old one had. It would last for years, maybe decades. But the nib, the writing tip, was original. Hyunwoo had managed to save it, and it still wrote with the same smooth flow his grandfather had loved. The final touch came from the cubs themselves. Using the very tips of their sharp claws, they etched tiny symbols into the brass. The symbols were Vornak, ancient marks that meant blessing, strength, and memory. They worked for hours, each mark requiring absolute control and precision. By the end, their paws were cramped and sore, but the symbols were perfect. In our tradition, Kira explained as she finished the last mark, these symbols protect tools and honor those who used them before. We put them on weapons that belonged to fallen warriors. Now we put them on your grandfather's pen. Hyunwoo held the pen for the first time since it had been taken from his desk. It felt different. Heavier, stronger, but also more delicate somehow. He tested it on a piece of paper. The ink flowed smoothly, creating clear black lines. It worked perfectly. Thank you, he said quietly. The cubs gathered around him, their ears high and proud. This is better than the original. You made it better. We made it together, Thrax corrected. Human precision and Vornak strength. The collaboration did not end with the pen. The station's chief engineer, a practical woman named Sun-hee, had heard about the project. She came to the storage bay one evening and watched the group work on a final test, using the techniques they had developed to repair a broken pressure gauge. Interesting, she said when they finished. The gauge worked perfectly, repaired in half the time it would normally take. I have a proposal. How would you feel about doing this officially? Mixed species repair teams, humans and Vornak working together on maintenance. Hyunwoo looked at the cubs. They looked back at him. Slowly, Thrax grinned, showing his sharp teeth. We would be good at that. Very good, Kira agreed. The best, Vex added with confidence. The pilot program started small. One human Vornak team working on minor repairs during off hours. Hyunwoo and the three cubs became the station's odd but effective repair squad. They fixed things that others said could not be fixed. They completed emergency repairs in record time. They proved that different approaches, when combined, created something stronger than either alone. Other teams formed. Young engineers requested Vornak partners. Vornak warriors volunteered to learn precision work. The storage bay that had once been forgotten became a meeting place, where species learned from each other and prejudices dissolved under the simple act of working side by side. Ji-Wan documented everything. She filled notebooks with observations about cross-species cooperation. She recorded interviews, took photos, and wrote papers that would later be read in universities across human space. But her favorite document was simple: a photograph of a human and three Vornak cubs all smiling, holding up a repaired brass pen. You know what's funny? Hyunwoo said one day as they worked on repairing a door mechanism. If my pen had never broken, none of this would have happened. If we had not tried to fix it with tape, Thrax added, we would never have learned. If you had been angry instead of understanding, Kira said to Hyunwoo, we would have run away in shame. So many ifs, Vex observed. But here we are. Here we are, Hyunwoo agreed. He patted his shirt pocket, where the repaired pen rested safely. It was his constant companion now, used every day, getting more scratches and wear as time passed. But that was okay. The pen was not a museum piece to be protected. It was a tool to be used, carrying forward his grandfather's legacy while creating new memories, and wrapped around it, visible through the pocket fabric, were the small polymer bands placed by cubs who had learned that caring about objects was not weakness. That precision was not the opposite of strength. That different species working together with patience and respect could create something beautiful. The pen had been broken. The cubs had tried to fix it with tape. They had failed spectacularly, and from that failure had grown something none of them could have predicted: friendship, understanding, and a new way of seeing the galaxy. Sometimes the best things come from mistakes, Hyunwoo thought. Sometimes you have to break something to make it better. Sometimes you need to fail together before you can succeed together. And sometimes a simple pen wrapped in tape can change everything. 3 months after the pen repair, Nexus 7 faced its greatest crisis. It started with a sound that no one wanted to hear, a deep groaning that echoed through the station's metal bones. The gravity regulators, systems that kept everyone safely on the floor, were failing. In the command center, alarms screamed. Red lights flashed on every screen. The station commander, a gray-haired man who had seen many emergencies, stared at the damage reports with growing horror. How long do we have? He asked the chief engineer. Sun-Hee checked her tablet, her face grim. 6 hours. Maybe less. The gravity differential is increasing. If we don't fix it, the station will tear itself apart. Different sections will have different gravity and the stress will break the hull. Can we evacuate? Not everyone. Not in 6 hours. We have 400 people on this station. Then we fix it. What do you need? Sun-Hee pulled up a schematic of the damaged section. The problem is here in the lower gravity control room. The main crystal matrix is shattered. We need to remove it and install a new one, but... She paused. The room is in a high gravity zone now. 3 times normal gravity. Humans can't work in there. We'll be crushed. What about the Vornak? They come from a high-gravity world. They could survive the gravity, Sun-Hee admitted, but the repair requires extremely delicate work. The crystal matrix is fragile. One wrong move and it shatters. The Vornak are strong, but their hands she did not finish. Everyone knew. Vornak claws were not made for precision work. Silence filled the command center. The problem seemed impossible. Humans had the skill, but not the strength. Vornak had the strength, but not the skill. And they had 6 hours to figure it out or die. Elder Wrath had been standing quietly in the corner, listening. Now he stepped forward. What about the cubs? He said. Everyone turned to look at him. The cubs have been training with the human Hyunwoo, Elder Wrath continued. They have learned precision. They have learned patience. And they are Vornak, so they can survive the gravity. They're children, the commander said. They are young warriors. Elder Wrath corrected firmly, and they may be our only chance. Sun-Hee looked at the clock. 5 hours and 43 minutes remaining. She made a decision. Get them. And get Hyunwoo. If we're going to try this, we do it with our best team. 20 minutes later, Hyunwoo and the 3 cubs stood in the suiting room. Heavy environmental suits hung on the walls, specially made to protect against extreme conditions. The cubs had never worn such equipment before. They looked nervous. You don't have to do this, Hyunwoo said quietly. This is dangerous. Very dangerous. If something goes wrong, we do it, Thrax said firmly. You taught us that different strengths working together are powerful. Now we prove it. Together, Kira added. Like fixing the pen, Vex said with a nervous grin. Except bigger. Much bigger, Hyunwoo agreed. But he smiled. Okay, let's go save a station. The damaged gravity control room was a nightmare. Red emergency lights cast everything in blood-colored shadows. The gravity pressed down like a giant hand, making every movement difficult. The cubs moved carefully, their strong legs handling the extra weight better than Hyunwoo had hoped. He could only watch from outside through cameras, his voice guiding them through their helmet speakers. The crystal matrix is straight ahead, he said. See the blue glow? That's it, or what's left of it. The cubs approached the damaged equipment. The crystal matrix was a beautiful thing when whole, a perfect geometric structure that regulated gravitational harmonics. Now it was shattered, pieces held together only by the housing around it. First, we remove the old one, Hyunwoo instructed. Thrax, Kira, you'll need to work together. The housing bolts are on either side. Remove them at the same time so the matrix doesn't shift. The cubs had practiced for this. Months of working with Hyunwoo had taught them to coordinate, to move as a team. Their claws, once too clumsy for delicate work, now moved with careful precision. The bolts came free. The housing opened. Good, Hyunwoo said. Now lift it straight up. Don't let it tilt. The pieces will fall apart if you tilt it. Thrax and Kira gripped the crystal matrix carefully. Even broken, it was heavy. In the high gravity, it was almost too heavy. Their arms shook with effort. Slowly, smoothly, they lifted. The matrix came free and they carried it to the side, setting it down on the floor. Phase 1 complete, Sunhee's voice crackled over the radio. 4 hours remaining. Now comes the hard part. Vex had the new crystal matrix. It sat in a protective case, gleaming and perfect. He carried it carefully to the housing, his young arms struggling with the weight. Ready, he said. Remember what I taught you, Hyunwoo said. His voice was calm, but his hands outside the room were clenched in stress. Slow and steady. Line up the connectors first. Don't force anything. If it doesn't fit easily, something is wrong. Vex lowered the crystal matrix toward the housing. His hands trembled slightly. So much weight, so much pressure. And the crystal was so fragile. One slip, one crack, and they would have to start over. If they had time to start over. Left side is lined up, Kira said, checking the alignment. Right side, wait, it's off by a few millimeters. Vex rotates slightly toward Thrax. Vex adjusted. The crystal shifted in his grip. Then the station shook. Another tremor, stronger than before. The gravity regulators were getting worse. Vex stumbled. The crystal matrix tilted in his hands. No! Hyunwoo shouted. Kira moved. Her training, her months of practice, her natural predator reflexes all combined in one perfect motion. Her claws reached out and caught the crystal matrix, steadying it. For one terrible second, the entire station's fate balanced on the tips of her sharp claws. Those claws that had once destroyed a pen with careless strength now held a crystal matrix with perfect, gentle precision. She breathed slowly, carefully adjusting her grip. The crystal stopped tilting. I have it, she said quietly. Vex regained his balance. Together, the two of them lowered the crystal the final centimeters into place. It settled into the housing with a soft click. Perfect alignment, bolts, Hyunwoo said. His voice was shaking now. Secure it. Quickly but carefully. Thrax and Vex installed the bolts. Their claws moved fast but controlled, threading each bolt perfectly. Kira held the crystal steady until the last bolt was tight. Then she stepped back. Activating now, Sunhee said. The new crystal matrix began to glow. Blue light filled the room, getting brighter and brighter. The gravity began to normalize. The pressure that had been crushing down eased. The groaning sound that had filled the station for hours finally stopped. It's working, Sunhee announced. Gravity stabilizing across all sections. System nominal. Crisis averted. The command center erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying with relief. 400 lives saved. Years of research preserved. And all because 3 cubs had learned that strength and precision were not opposites but partners. Hyunwoo met the cubs as they exited the control room. They were exhausted, their suits drenched with sweat, but they were grinning. He hugged each of them, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. Vornak did not hug, but these Vornak did. You saved everyone, he said simply. We learned from the best, Thrax replied. We learned together, Hyunwoo corrected. And we'll keep learning together. The store official commendations. Universities requested interviews, but the cubs themselves stayed humble. They knew the truth. They had learned these skills because they had once tried to fix a pen with tape and failed. Years passed. The cubs grew into adults and joined a new organization, the Galactic Cooperation Corps. They trained other young Vornak in precision work. They taught other species about Vornak binding techniques. They became bridges between worlds, proving that cooperation was stronger than competition. Hyunwoo remained on Nexus 7, still fixing things, still using his grandfather's pen. The pen that had been broken and wrapped in tape and rebuilt into something better. The pen with Vornak symbols etched into its brass body. The pen that had changed everything. He kept it in his pocket always, and sometimes when he took it out to write, people would ask about the string. He would tell them the story. About 3 cubs who thought they could fix a pen with tape. About how they failed. About how that failure taught them more than success ever could have. Humans attach meaning to objects, he would say. Other species think it's strange. But this pen means more to me now than it ever did before. It's my grandfather's memory. It's a lesson in patience. It's proof that broken things can be made better. And it's a symbol of friendship between species. The pen still wrote perfectly. The ink still flowed smooth and black. But now when Hyunwoo used it, he thought not just of his grandfather but of 3 cubs who cared enough to try, who failed with honor, who learned from their mistakes, who proved that the galaxy was better when different species worked together. On Kresh Prime, Elder Wrath started a new tradition. Young Vornak warriors were taught not just to hunt and fight but to create and repair. They learned that strength without precision was incomplete, that power without control was wasted, that the ability to be gentle was just as important as the ability to be fierce. And somewhere in a museum on Earth, in a case labeled Cultural Exchange, sat a roll of medical tape and a badly dented piece of brass. The first attempt at R